Hello, this is Elisa Becker, and this is the new recording of the CMS webinar. Yes, that's right, we forgot to hit the record button until about halfway through, so if you already watched the live webinar, you're going to notice this might be a little bit different, but we're just going to re-record what we did before and send out the recording later on. So the first thing I'm going to do is introduce all of the players. I am Elisa Becker, and I manage the CMS. I have Chris Stewart, our campus project manager and campus support here with me. And then we have Dan Michelle in our East Coast office. Dan takes care of Blink. So the first thing I am going to talk about is the upgrade. The upgrade is scheduled for next Tuesday evening, April 18th, around 8:30 at night. We will need to kick you out of the CMS for a couple of hours. When the upgrade is over, we will do some testing, make sure everything works, and then we will let you know when you can go back into the CMS. We won't be available that evening to answer any questions, but Chris and Dan and I have cleared our schedules for all day Wednesday to answer any questions you might have. So if you need something, you can always email wts@ucsd.edu, and we will either email you back or we could schedule a quick phone call or screen share to walk you through any issues you have with the new CMS. Okay. I also want to talk about our new training. We have taken the opportunity with this upgrade to combine our two sets of training. So previously we had all the campus-wide training on the WTS site, and we had the Blink and Triton Link training in Blink. And we're going to go ahead and combine these for a few reasons. The first one is the code base is so similar for both of the types of sites. The sites are just more similar than they are not alike. We also, as we introduce new features and templates, we want those available to the largest number of people. And then we realize that a lot of you work in more than one site, and we want to minimize your training time. We're also taking this opportunity to go with the new training model. Some of you might have heard Torrey Pines Center South, where we all work, is going to be renovated, and we will be kicked out of this building later this year for about a year to a year and a half. So we will no longer have a training room. So the last actual in-person class is going to be next Thursday, April 20th, and you can still sign up for that through UC Learning. And then after that, when users need to get access to the CMS, we will give you access to our Sandbox Site, have you run through a series of exercises, and then one of us will schedule a quick phone call, maybe a screen share chat to answer any questions you might have. So that is all that I have. We will be sharing the link to this webinar later on this week through a CMS tip, and we will also be sharing the link for our new training module. And I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
Okay, hey everybody. Yeah, as Lisa kindly said, we forgot to hit record before, so this is kind of a redo. So Dan and I are going to take a shot at this again. Hopefully we'll catch everything that we talked about this morning. We did record the Q&A session, however, so that will be spliced onto the end of this video. So you will have that. So hopefully we'll have everything here. What we're going to do now is look at the new 8.3 CMS, and you're looking at it now. I'm sharing my my Chrome tab with you. You can see it looks quite a bit different. You'll go to it the same way, cms.ucsd.edu. This is a temporary QA site just for us. As Elisa said, it'll be launched next Tuesday evening, the 18th. So you should see it when you come into work on Wednesday. And Dan and Elisa and I will be available all Wednesday for your questions. It should be fairly intuitive. Looking at this is the screen you'll see when you go first log in. If you look at it, it's quite a bit simpler, much cleaner, big buttons, easy to read. It's responsive. These things out here are called widgets. And the one widget that won't go away is the one that you'll see has my name on it here. And it has the date, it has this thing 9+, which means notifications waiting for you. Other widgets here are, below that is My Sites, and you can set your default site as you used to in the settings. So let me show you where settings are real quick. So if I hover over, you can see my pictures here. That's another new feature. You can add your own picture. Here's the settings right here. So I just popped up that drop-down menu. So you can go in there and set your default site. However, you still need to choose it from here when you first log in. So that's kind of new. It also has other sites. If some of you are power users, you have multiple sites, you can just choose them from your most recent listing here. Other widgets, new content. So I can just create files and folders and pages here if I need it. My content is recently accessed content. That could be handy. So those are widgets. Now let's say I want to get rid of a widget. I want a simpler looking home page. All I do is hover over the widget, click on the delete X here. It asks me, do I really want to do that? I say okay. It pops that up. I want to get rid of this one too, let's say, and it's gone. Okay. Now if I want to add a widget or add back a widget, I just come over here to my home widget and click on add widget, and it gives me all these things here. Some of you may have fewer than I have, but they're all here. So let's say I wanted to add back notifications. I can click on here, and you can see it popped up right underneath it. Okay, I can also move them around if I want to. So the dashboard used to be an area that I suggested people kind of ignore in the past, but now it's really useful, and you can customize it much more easily. Okay, so the first thing we normally do is go to a site. As I said before, I can choose from my site's links down here, but I can also, as we used to do, just go to this little fill-in menu up here. I've got a lot of sites, so it takes a minute to load. Let's say I wanted to go to Sandbox. I can start typing, and it'll reduce it down to my choices. So I'm going to go to that Sandbox site that most of you are familiar with from the classes. And it puts us into the site, and it looks fairly similar to what we're used to. It has the files and folders over here, and over here is just a duplication of that to begin with. But you notice there's not the 3 different levels of tabs that we used to see. Everything are either big buttons or clearly marked areas. So you can see edit, publish, you can add comments about, say, a folder. And then more over here. So let me, instead of a folder, let me click on a page, and I do that just as I did before. I just go over to, in this case, the home page, the index page. It puts up a much more accurate version of the page we see over here in view, what used to be called view mode. They don't even label it anymore. You might remember that you used to be able to hover over next to a file, and it popped up a downward pointing arrow that I could choose other options from. Those options are either from the More menu over here, as it used to be. So here's Move, Rename, etc. I could also come back here and using my keyboard, hold down Control and pop up the same options over here. So that's still available for you. It's just a little bit more consistent with the keyboard interface. Okay, so we're viewing the page. Now most of us want to go in and edit, so I'm going to click on Edit and get right into the editing area. You notice it's much simpler. There's no, everything is pretty much labeled what it is, except I'm going to move something out here. I seem to be cycling a little bit here. It's pulling up something. Okay, there we go. All right, so we have the same titles pretty much, a display name, which is a human readable version, the title, the summary, the author, all that's the same, and again, the red asterisk for required information. So things look similar, but it's much cleaner, and if we get down into the WYSIWYG editor area, you'll see the WYSIWYG editor is much simpler. One thing I want to point out is the HTML editor is now not labeled HTML. This is the icon for source code or HTML, and I'm going to just click on it real quick. The default is into the advanced editor, which just autofills whatever you're typing. Some of you might not like that, so you can just click on uncheck the advanced editor mode. So that's how you get into HTML, pretty much like before, it's just the icon changed. So I'm going to edit something here, and I'm going to edit, say, this Peace Corps Advisory Council. So as before, I select what I want to link, and I click on the chain link here for insert or edit. And it looks fairly similar. I can choose between internal or external. If I choose external, here's the HTTP URL I can type in or paste in. Going back to internal, what's different is this button now gives me a lot more options. So I can easily see recent files that I want to link to, pages I want to link to, or I can search for them here, or I can click on Browse and go find them through here. What's really new is this upload area here. So you might recall that we used to have to link images with two very separate processes. One was uploading the image into the CMS and then going to the page and finding it and creating the link that way. Now you can do that all in pretty much one step. So I created the link. Now if I want that link to be an image, I can now just click on upload, drag an image file here, and again, be sure to create an image ahead of time that's going to be small in size and the correct dimensions so that extra processing is not getting done. So once that's done, though, you can just drag it in here, choose upload. You can even choose, say, the images folder where I want it to be placed, and we recommend that still. So that's how we would do that. I would then hit choose, and it would both upload the image and create the link to it all in one. So that's pretty cool. That's something new, but what's different is the way that you save and submit before. So after you finished editing, and let me make another edit here. I'm just going to, instead of making the link, I'm going to create this, change this to a bold. Actually, bold is a bad idea. I'm going to change it to an italicized lettering here. So I've made a change, and now if you look it up here, you see the draft is saved. So it does save the draft every few seconds as before. But now we have this thing called save and preview. I can still close it. That's the same as cancel. But if I want to save my changes and preview it, I just click on save and preview. As before, it puts me back into what we used to call the view mode. But look, it's popped up this dialog box telling me the draft is saved. Now I can click submit to save changes. So it's really kind of two steps here. And they did this, I believe, because drafts and saving were so complicated and convoluted before, you weren't sure really what was going on. At least now you know, okay, I've saved a draft. Now I need to submit it if I want that draft to be the first version, the live viewable version, publishable version. So I'm going to go ahead and click submit here. I could have clicked this button as well. Now I can actually, it keeps, it automatically puts a comment in, which is nice. I can add comments here if I want. I could say I did not add the image this time, whatever I want to do. Now I have two choices. I can either submit, which means save and make this the current version, or I can say check content and submit. I'm going to actually leave it to Dan to go a little bit further into what that means during his time. So I'm going to hit submit, and it's going to save this as the new viewable version. Now you can see it's also saying, okay, it's detected that I've saved something, I've submitted it. Do I want to publish it? So I could just cancel if I don't, or I can click on here, or I can click on the publish button right here, and it puts me into what used to be the publish tab. So things are much more simplified here, and the default is the same as before. So I have the delivery and staging by default selected. So as most of you know, all you need to do now is just hit submit. And I have an option here of going to view the published queue. So it shows me what's in there. It's already finished, so that was pretty quick. I'm going to go back with just my back button here into the page. So that saved it and published it. So that's pretty much the new way of doing things. And the only big change, the two things I want to emphasize here are when you create a link, you have the option now of uploading an image at that time. And when you save something, you first save it and then submit it. Okay, so submit is really making it the latest visible version. I think that's actually going to be a good thing because it simplifies the drafts. Okay, and just to review real quick, under more is where you'll find move, rename, copy, etc. under here. So the buttons are much more simple than they were before. Okay, one other thing I wanted to point out and is this big add content, big red button up here, plus sign. So I can, from here, I can create a folder or image or whatever. So that's kind of the equivalent of the new tab before. So things are much simpler, cleaner, and I think more effective. I think you'll like working in here. So that's a generic CMS site. I'm going to let Dan go not only into a little bit more detail of what I just did in a couple of areas, but also talk specifically about blank. So Dan, I'm going to unmute you here, and I'm going to unstop my share, and Dan's going to start his.
All right, can you see my screen?
He
Okay, so like Chris said, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail in some of the things that he just did. Specifically, I'm going to make a new page and add some images in there. And so you'll see some of the same motions again, but that's just going to be helpful in seeing how new things are laid out. So I'm on my home screen here, and you can see my dashboard. And I'm going to use this My Content widget and just jump to a page. So here I am. We can see that I'm in blank. And I can pick one of these pages here, and maybe I'll pick index, and I'll see this page come up just like it is on the web. Now what I want to do is create a new page. So like Chris just mentioned, I'm going to come over here to this add content button. And you can see I have a number of different options. These are the page types that we have available in blank. You're going to see different page types depending on what is set up for your specific site. And if I wanted to just put an image into the underscore image files, I could select here, but I'm going to create a new page and add some images directly to that. So I'll pick an article page. And that brings up a window that looks very similar to the edit screen that you just saw before. I want to point out two main differences. One, this page name right here, this is the system name. So the new version of the CMS isn't using the specific term system name, but this is where you're going to put the name that's going to become part of the URL. So we want to follow those rules, all lowercase, no spaces. We're going to use hyphens instead. So I'll just name this something. Folder is where in the file structure of the site I want this new page to go. By default, it's opening up in the folder where I was. So I was looking at this index page inside of resources, and that's my default. We can see the full path here, link sponsor, link resources, that's the site. If I wanted to change it, I could click on that, and we see the file chooser here, and I could select a different file to go into. But that's not what I want to do. I want to keep it right here, so I'm going to cancel that. Now, just like we saw before, we've got display name, title, summaries, authors, and again, these are required, so I'm just going to fill in something for these quickly. Now, these display name, title, summary, author, this is what we called inline metadata previously. And you can see it's not labeled that specifically anymore. The titles are still the same. Now there's this button up here, metadata, that is a different type of metadata than what we're normally using. So these aren't things that we generally need to use. So we're going to ignore that for the most part. We're just going to focus on content here. And I'm going to scroll down and show you what the page looks like here for my Blink users. We've got the type of article. We can choose the navigation. It defaults to automatic navigation. That's the same as before. We're going to have the required introduction. Again, most of the time we can make that the same as the summary. If I wanted to insert an image at the top of the page, I could do so here and insert the alt text. And then we get to our main content. We have our body and we have our contact line. I'll just start with the contact line. And we have one of our standard lines here. I can select this and create a link. And again, like Chris showed you before, we have both the internal and external links. Again, if you want to do an email link, it's going to be the same as before. We're just going to do mail to and then the email address. Mail to and then the email address. And then for the main content, I'm going to put some images in. And what I'm going to do is use this as an opportunity to show you the different ways that you can use the file chooser. So we can do maybe we'll start a heading. So we can go to formats, headings, and we're going to start with heading 2 because the title is automatically heading 1. And we have nature images, and then I want to insert an image. So I'm going to click on this icon. Now I'm going to choose an image that I already have, so that's going to be internal, and I'm going to choose a file. So now, like we saw before, there are 3 options. The first option gives you recent files that you've had before. So here we can see a list of things that I've looked at recently. You can also search. This only searches this list. So if I wanted to get to narrow down to forest, that will just search within that list. I can click on view thumbnail and get a little preview of that to make sure that that's what I want. And then I can choose it. Now the image description automatically populates as the title of the image. We can adjust that. And then insert that into the page. Now let's try another in a different way. So I'll create another heading here. And again, your headings are in this drop down. And let's find a picture of the chancellor. So again, I can choose a file. And if I know where my pictures of the chancellor are, I could go into browse. And as this loads, we can see the path. I'm in blank, I'm in underscore images and homepage. And I know that I put the pictures of the chancellor under chancellor blog. So I can click on that, and then up here, this first file tells me where I am. And then I have all of the pictures that I use for the chancellor blog on the Blink homepage. I can, again, use the thumbnails and use that to help me narrow down the picture I want. I could also search. So if I search, we'll do that, and it narrows it down to pictures in the Chancellor blog. There we go, that have Chancellor in the title. So there's a nice picture. Let's choose that. I'll choose, and again, the default will be the file name, which is going to be lowercase and with no spaces. So I can change the description so that it has proper capitalization. Now, a new feature that we have, we can go under advanced and click use Figure and Figcaption for this image. And that's going to give us a caption underneath the image. So if I click OK now, and I scroll down, we can see that we've got the image and we've got the caption. And we can go in here and edit it more. This caption is going to by default be the image description. So if you just bring the image in, that'll be the file name. If you update the image description, it'll be the image description. But you can take that and update it as such. So we can have some extra text here. And now we're ready to save the page. So again, we're going to go to save and preview. And like Chris said, the saving process is now more linear than it was before. Previously, you kind of had this choice where you could either submit your changes or save them as a draft, and some people got confused as to which one they should do when. Now things are in a row. So you're going to save and preview. So I'll click here, and that's going to save it as a draft. So you can see up here in the blue text, there's a note. You're previewing a draft. To make these changes permanent, click submit. So right now, these changes are just linked to my account and I see them. If I want these to be in the CMS permanently, then I will click submit. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to click submit. And now, again, I can make some changes. So this is first version, and I can make some new notes, new page, testing images. Now, for my Blink users, these notes are actually very helpful for me when I go and review the updates made to Blink. This can help me narrow in on recent edits to a page. So when you fill those out, that's very helpful to me. Now, again, we can either submit or check content and submit. Check content and submit is going to do a spell check. So let's try that. Now, we have a number of options here. Oh, it didn't pick up the one I wanted. So we have CMS, it doesn't like, but we can ignore that. It doesn't like the chancellor's name, our email address, or these. So I purposefully misspelled two, but it didn't pick that up. So we're going to hit next anyway, and we'll take a look and see if we can get that to pick up properly. So you can see it apparently thinks that TW is a word. So we recommend that you use the spell check, but apparently you can't depend on it 100%. So make sure you proofread your pages. Let's go ahead and edit this page, and we'll do a misspelling that I know worked from before. And again, I'm going to save and preview. We get our nice pop-ups reminding us that we need to submit if we want this to become the current version in the CMS. I'll do that. And this is not a note that I should see in your Blink pages, but this is appropriate here. We'll check and submit again. And all right, here's our error. So we can click fix on this, and it gives us a number of choices to select. We'll select the correct spelling for 3, click next, and now we're ready if we want to publish them. I'm not going to publish this page right now. Chris showed you how publishing works, but that's just another example of how we can go in, use add content to create the content of our choice, work through the process of actually creating the content and saving and submitting it and getting it ready to publish. So I think with that being said, we're ready to go on to our previously recorded questions and answers. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Dan. So we're going to transition now to what was live this morning. So thanks, everyone.
Hey, everybody. I'm back. So we've got a few questions coming up.
So the first question is, can you show them how to add a widget?
Someone asked about adding a widget. So Dan, if you could stop your share. Great, and I'll start my share of the CMS, and I'm going to go back to the dashboard. Okay, I'm back here. So these are widgets, as I said before. They give you information in a very graphic way. If you look in the upper left widget, this is the only widget you can't get rid of, but this is where you add a widget. So I'm going to see this plus sign, add widget. I'm going to click on it, and now it gives me a list of widgets that I can add to my home page. So let's say I do want to have a stale content widget. Actually, I got rid of my notifications before, so I'm going to add it back. So I'm just going to select it, and it added it back. Here it is, notifications right here. So that's it's very simple to get rid of them. Just highlight or hover over the widget, hit the X, and then you can add it back by clicking on the add widget. So very simple. You have another question?
Okay, so yes, we have a lot of questions.
Okay.
So if you don't mind, I'll just tell them to you.
Okay. Lisa's going to relate them to me.
Do you need to unlink a picture to delete it? I'd like to see how to delete a picture.
I don't believe you do.
I just found what the problem was with that.
Is Dan
Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
All right. So can you?
Yeah, I'll stop my share.
Back? Okay, it didn't like when I had the picture selected and then was trying to delete it. But if I'm just next to the picture, it may be difficult to see, but you can see there's a giant cursor up and down the side of the picture. If you just backspace from there, it will get rid of the picture.
And the link and everything with it. Yeah.
Right. So it just didn't want to do it while it was selected.
Okay. Another question?
Can I unmute? Okay, I'm not talking. So there's a question about multiple file upload.
Multiple file upload.
And we'll also have that like we did before, if you have manager access.
Okay, so the question is about uploading multiple files, and the way we did that before was zip file. As far as I know, that hasn't changed. You still need manager access to do that. So most of you don't have manager access, but if you are one of our power users and you're comfortable with that degree of access, we can give it to you, and then you can, but it's going to be the same thing. Basically, you zip upload a folder with multiple files in it. So that I have to say that hasn't gotten much better.
And uploading forms.
And eForms will work the same way they did before. So we'll embed the eForm code into a page, into the HTML source code. And generally, we've been doing that for people. I know there's a few users out there who've been creating their own forms, but generally, we do that. You go to our web page and request an eForm from us, and we'll take care of it. So that's basically the same. Remember, none of these changes affect your real site. This is all just within the CMS.
Okay, another question, how do you add a new picture into the CMS to use later? So not actually place it on the page. Okay,
someone asked about adding an image into the CMS without it being automatically a link or needing it as a link. You just want to upload images and then use them later. So it's the same process. Let me share my screen again. And I'm going to go back to Sandbox Site. Notice I did that by clicking on my sites, and I'm back in here. Okay, so I'm going to add content. See this plus sign up here? Actually, okay, it's so I'm going to click on image right here from the add content, and now I can create the file name. As Dan said, that's your system name, so that's needs to be all smalls, no spaces, etc. Then I can drag and drop an image from my desktop on here. I can then upload it just by saving and previewing. But again, I save and preview, and then I submit. to make sure it's actually been done. So this is where I'll, the placement folder is where I'm going to put it. So I could click on here if I want to move it to another place, a recent folder I've used, or browse to a new folder. Okay, so it's basically the same. I'm starting with the new, what used to be the new menu. In this case, it's called Add Content, and it's got this big red plus sign, so it's hard to miss it. But that's where you would create a folder, create an image, create a file, and it's the same concept as before. You create the container for an image and then upload the image into it, or you create a container for a file and then upload a Word doc or a PDF, for instance, into it. So that's pretty much the same. It's just I think it's a little bit easier to recognize now.
So some more questions about using external images, and we want them to be in the CMS.
There's a question about using external images. We still want the images to be in the CMS, because otherwise, if you're linking to an image outside it, you're going to have there's no control over that image, for one thing, and it might go away, and plus it takes more processing power and time. So we really advise, as we've said before, to create your image outside the CMS in Photoshop, reduce it, save it for the web. There's an option in Photoshop for that. So you reduce the size as much as you can and create the dimensions you want, and then upload it, as we did just now, into the a folder, the images folder, etc. So link to images that are in the CMS, not to outside the CMS, mostly because you don't have any control over those.
And a question about how to publish a page so it appears on all the sidebars.
There's a question about publishing a page so that it appears
in the nav.
In the nav. I'm not understanding.
So publish a new page. They want it to show up in the left hand in the top nav. So you have to publish the site. Adding a new page, get it on the nav.
Oh, I see. Okay. Again, you would, if you're creating, I guess the question is, if you're creating a new page, how does it appear on the left nav? And again, that was controlled by the display name, for one, and the checkboxes for whether you want to do publish or index it, as they refer to it.
If I think the question is, how, when you publish a page, do you make it show up on, for example, the sister page?
Okay.
And the answer, I believe, is you still need to publish the whole folder. Because when you're changing that page and updating that system name, it's only changed within the CMS. If you want to see a page changed live, it needs to be published. So just because you publish one page in a folder, it won't automatically update on the live site unless those sister pages are also published.
Right.
So that's the same as before.
Yeah. You can see it within the CMS, but you won't see it on your site until you publish it out.
Question
about
preferred browsers.
Preferred browsers, that's pretty much the same. I've been using Chrome. Other people have been using Firefox. As you know, Microsoft has dropped support for Internet Explorer, so we don't really recommend that. There's a page in our website, the wts.ucsd.edu, where it goes over recommended browsers, but that hasn't changed. I've not run into any issues using Chrome, and I haven't heard of any issues with Firefox either. Okay. I'm seeing other questions pop up in the Q&A section.
Something about the new version, about template options. And that'll be separate from the upgrade.
Oh, there's a question about the new templates that are coming down the pipeline. That's still several weeks away, but for those of you who haven't heard, if you go to ucsd.edu, you'll see a sort of a new idea for a homepage with modular areas, including some video. So those modules will be available eventually into the CMS, but not for a while. There's still some issues with responsiveness, etc. We want to make sure that things behave normally, so that they are coming, new templates, especially for the homepage, but not for a while.
Just a question about publishing.
The question about publishing, what was the question?
If I'm a user with publishing rights, how do I publish on the new CMS?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
All right, this is it.
This is
a little clunky. Isn't it?
we have to iron out this Q&A section.
If somebody has publishing rights now, how will they publish in the new CMS?
The publishing rights remain the same, so we'll still assign you the publishing access that you request and need, whether it's just for staging or publishing. So none of that has changed. The same process, we give you the access that you require, and you'll see the options appear when you log in. Okay, so that hasn't changed.
Do you want me to take some?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to hand it over to Elisa.
Hello. Excuse our passing back and forth of the mic. We're still trying to figure out the best way to do this. But I see a couple more questions that I'm going to take. Somebody asked how to create a photo carousel. That is basically the same way we do it now. That might be something we would want to go through with you individually. We talked about the new updates. A question about the file name associated with an image is automatically populated. Yes, that'll be the same. If you upload a new file, the system name will default to the name of that file on your computer, and you will be able to overwrite that when you upload it. There's a question about accessing Google Analytics through the new CMS. That functionality has actually existed with a previous version. We just need to create the connectors for all of the sites, and we'll make sure we do that. There's some limited analytics you get through the CMS, but you can also get the full Google Analytics via your Google account name, and we could set you up with that. Okay. There's something, do you see anything else, Chris?
There's a question about editing an image with correct dimensions for the rotating banner 1280 by 400. Yes,
so there is a simple image editor within the CMS, and let's see if I can do that right now. How do I get that chat window to go away? Okay, so there are some simple, I'm going to minimize this. Sorry, working on a laptop. So if I edit this image, I have some options for changing the dimensions. So you can see over here, there's a width and a height. If I wanted to do some simple changes, say I want to reduce this down to 250, you'll see that the height will also be reduced. I just click the check mark, and then I can either save and preview it, or I can close it. Now that's just a very simple image editor. If you were going to be working with images a lot, we recommend you use something like Photoshop, or Microsoft has a free version called Paint. Okay. Any other?
Can I jump in on the question?
Yes, sir, Dan.
I see one asking about the available templates. They didn't see the blank template when I clicked add content. That's because all of the templates that you see when you click on add content will depend on your site. So since I was in Blink, Blink doesn't use a blank template page. We have pages that are pre-formatted more than that. But whatever templates you see currently in the CMS in your site, you should see as options when you hit add content.
That is correct. Thank you, Dan. Okay, I think that is it. You can always send more questions to wts@ucsd.edu. We will provide the recording for this and links to our new training later on this week. And we hope you enjoy. Hold on. Okay. Am I getting more questions? Thank you. We hope you enjoyed this webinar, and I'm sure we'll be talking to all of you soon. Thank you.